empowered to talk like this because of President Trump, even though, I mean, look, she's got a history of saying things like this completely on her own that have gone back before this administration. How do you countenance that with the rapid-ish response from ABC?
Yeah. Well, they made a connection together, right? When Trump said that, you know, touted her ratings, almost took credit for them, said it was about us. So they made their relationship clear. And he's made it more popular, I think, to be openly racist. And I think it's important that we don't make Trump seem this untouchable thing, you know, that no one gets to be Trump but Trump. Tens of millions of people voted for him after he showed his cards for years.
But are you suggesting that they're racist, or
yes.
The people who vote, all the people who voted for Donald Trump are racist?
Yes. They may not be violently racist. They may not be, he's targeted. He's very clear and strategic. Look, anti-blackness is a strategy that has been the foundation of part of the American project. So if we have to grapple with the idea that if you heard someone call at their rally say, build a wall, kill them all. If you heard someone say that the current sitting president was the N-word.
Listen, you know that people interpret this differently. And to paint with as broad a brush as you are, saying that everybody who voted for him is racist, you know how people operate. They compartmentalize, and they'll say that people compartmentalized during Bill Clinton, and you overlook the things that you're uncomfortable with because you like the policy.
But here's what
broad a brush stroke.
But racism isn't broad. So what you're not hearing is that there's so many different levels of racism and how it works itself out.
Yeah,
right?
I hear you.
So there's levels to how it is interpreted, and it's levels to how it is acted out. And most of the time, we are operating in racist structures. So you as an individual may not understand that you are racist, but you are working in a racist structure. So that's how policemen of color can be participatory, right? So it is so complicated, and that's why we have to have sustained, complicated, nuanced conversations that ground themselves in history.
You're saying the structure is racist.
Right.
And you know, look, it's just uncomfortable because, look, we interview, obviously, the Trump supporters all the time who would never in their real life say that they, or even act racist.
That's the part. People do not want to say that they are racist.
Behave racist. They would, I mean, you know, they're in multi-ethnic marriages. They've adopted children of color. I mean, there's just, look, America's a big melting pot. There's all sorts of people with different motivations. But I hear you.
But that's part of it.
About the system, and that's why we're having this conversation.
And it takes a lot of work because you can be racist and married to a Muslim.
Right.
It is possible.
So we have to. The 50 million, we're talking about your 50 million people, you know, 90% of Republicans who will say, we voted for taxes, we voted for Supreme Court justices, we voted for all of these things.
Right.
You know, this was not a vote because we wanted to pick the most racist guy.
Well, that was their candidate, right? But what we have to have the courage and the moral stamina to do is to really look at what you were voting for, right? So all those taxes and policies, how do they work out on people of color? How do they work out on poor people? And also the midterm. At the same time, we got Stacey Abrams, right? That happened in Georgia. So what we're doing is we're seeing us unravel a very complicated American project.
But can I say this? Can I jump in right quick? The reality is when Martin Luther King Jr. was at his height, most Americans did not believe that what he was doing was morally compelling. So the reality is this. They've always said, we're not against Martin Luther King Jr. integration. We're just against the racist mixing because the Bible tells us that interracial mixture is a sin. So when you talk about a moral framework, I think what's important here is to talk about the relationship between a structure of social injustice that perpetuates itself, doesn't need your participation in order for it to be unequal, and people's own bigotry and bias. So we have to disaggregate all that data. There is racial bigotry, there's racial bias, there's racial structures that perpetuate inequality. And true, Of course, people can say, look, I'm not for a guy. If you poll them, they'll say, I'm against racism, I'm against anti-blackness, but then they are attracted to Donald Trump. So the question you have to ask here, are you putting your consideration for taxes and the Constitution and your understanding of conservative life above the reality that along with that comes a vicious repudiation of a large segment of the American population? That's where we begin to clash with the ideals of ourselves and who we truly are. So America maintains a kind of collective delusion about its own reality, and at the same time, there's the truth beneath. What we got to do is to argue with each other, have conversations with each other, so this stuff becomes explicit, so we can put the poison outside of us and begin to negotiate in good faith.
What this does sound like, though, is what got Hillary Clinton into so much trouble during the campaign, where she made the comment about a basket of deplorables who vote for Donald Trump. That is why people would pick him. That you are racist.
No, we don't have to demonize everybody. No, I disagree with.
Okay,
we don't have to demonize everybody. Look. I can. If we got to a point where we can honestly say on the other side is an opponent that I don't demonize, what we're missing here is the degree to which even the white working class, which has been seen as the valuable commodity in this last election, what they don't get is a couple things. First of all, a rich billionaire is not your friend. Secondly, when Martin Luther King Jr. was in jail and his jailers came to him and said, you know what, Dr. King, integration is wrong and segregation is right, he said, no, it's not. Then he asked them, how much money do you make? And when they told him, he said, you need to be out here marching with us. Racism has hurt not only people of color, but poor white people who don't understand. If they tossed in with black and brown and red and yellow people, they would have a greater aggregate and a greater force for social justice than being divided. The viciousness of white supremacy is that it blocks the ability of even working class white people from seeing an ally in a person of color.
All right.
Yeah, this obviously only scratches the surface of this discussion right now. I mean,
but we really appreciate you guys having this conversation on New Day. We really appreciate you always coming on and being willing to talk about these really tough issues. Michaela, Angela Davis, Michael Eric Dyson, thank you both very much.
We'll be right back.
Be sure to tune into the Kevin Jackson Show, weekdays, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time.